Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Liberty, watching the sky turn dark. It was 3 in the afternoon, but something was blocking the sun. Something huge. Something that should not exist. "Sir, we're getting readings unlike anything we've ever seen," said Lieutenant Karen Davis, her voice shaking as she looked at her instruments. "The objects are massive. Each one is at least 10 miles wide." Jake looked through the main window and felt his heart stop. Floating above the earth were ships that looked like giant crystals. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. The ships glowed with soft blue light, and they moved without making any sound. There were hundreds of them, spread across the entire planet. "All weapons, target the nearest ship," Jake ordered. "Fire everything we have." The Liberty's plasma cannons roared to life. Bright orange beams shot toward the crystal ship. Jake held his breath, waiting to see the alien vessel explode. Instead, the beams passed right through the ship like it was made of air. The crystal ship didn't even slow down. "The weapons aren't working, sir," reported Sergeant Mike Collins from the weapons station. "It's like they're shooting at ghosts." Before Jake could respond, a voice filled his mind. It didn't come through his ears. It spoke directly inside his head, calm and beautiful like music. "People of Earth," the voice said, "do not fear. We are the Veilith. We have come to bring you peace and wisdom. Your weapons cannot harm us because we are beyond such crude things. We are here to guide you to a better future." Jake tried to speak but found he couldn't move. Around him, his crew stood frozen like statues. Only their eyes could move, looking around in terror. The voice continued to speak in their minds. "You have lived in darkness for too long. You fight wars. You destroy your world. You suffer because you do not know the proper way to live. We will teach you. We will show you how to find peace. But first, you must understand that we are not like you. We are eternal. We are powerful. To you, we must seem like gods." The ships began to descend toward Earth's major cities. Jake watched helplessly as one of the crystal vessels settled over New York. The moment it touched down, the buildings around it began to change. Metal and glass transformed into something that looked like white marble. The streets became smooth and clean. Even from space, Jake could see that the city was becoming something else, something alien. The voice spoke again. "Each city will have a temple where you can come to worship and learn. Those who serve faithfully will be blessed with long life and happiness. Those who resist will find only sorrow. This is not a choice, children of Earth. This is the natural order. The strong guide the weak, the wise teach the foolish. The eternal care for the mortal." Hours passed before Jake could move again. When the paralysis finally lifted, half of his crew was on their knees, tears streaming down their faces. They looked up at the crystal ships with expressions of pure worship. "They're beautiful," whispered Karen Davis. "How could we ever think to fight them? They're so far above us." Jake felt sick. "Davis, get control of yourself. They're invaders." "No, sir," she said softly. "They're saviors. Can't you feel it? The peace they bring? We've been fighting for so long, and now we don't have to anymore." Jake looked around the bridge. Most of his crew wore the same expression as Davis. They had been broken in a matter of hours. Not through violence, but through something worse. They had been made to believe they were inferior, down on Earth. The same thing was happening everywhere. The crystal ships had landed in every major city. Temples were being built and humans were lining up to enter them. On the communication channels, Jake heard reports from around the world. Military leaders were surrendering. Government officials were declaring the Veilith to be divine beings who deserved absolute obedience. But not everyone was convinced. Deep in the underground tunnels beneath Chicago, Dr. Lisa Harper was working frantically in her hidden laboratory. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms. But there had never been any alien life forms to study. Until today, Lisa had been monitoring the strange energy readings from the Veilith ships when something caught her attention. The readings were unusual, but not impossible. They showed advanced technology, yes, but technology nonetheless, not magic. Not divine power, just very advanced science. Computer, analyze the energy patterns from the alien vessels, she said to her laboratory's artificial intelligence system, analysis complete. The computer replied, "The energy signatures are consistent with quantum manipulation technology. Estimated power source appears to be artificial fusion generators. No evidence of supernatural or divine energy detected." Lisa sat back in her chair. They weren't gods. They were just aliens with better technology than humans had. But somehow, they were making people believe they were divine. How? She spent the next several hours studying the broadcasts that the Valith were sending out. They weren't just speaking into people's minds. They were also transmitting some kind of signal that affected human brain chemistry. The signal made people feel calm and submissive. It made them want to worship. It's a form of mind control, Lisa said to herself. Subtle but effective. They're not just conquering our cities, they're conquering our minds. Meanwhile, in the ruins of what had been the Pentagon, a group of military officers had gathered in a hidden bunker. Jake Morrison was among them, having managed to land his ship and escape before his entire crew was mentally compromised. "Report," said General Frank Williams, a tough old soldier who seemed immune to the Velith's mental influence. "Sir, our weapons are useless against them," Jake said. "But I don't think they're what they claim to be. My science officer detected some kind of projection technology before she was affected. I think their appearance might be an illusion." "That matches what we're hearing from other sources," the general said. "There's a scientist in Chicago, Dr. Harper, who thinks they're using some kind of mind control technology. We need to make contact with her." "Sir, most of our communication networks are compromised," said Colonel Amy Foster. "The Valith are monitoring everything." "Then we go old school," General Williams said. "We use runners. Human messengers carrying written notes. We build a network the old-fashioned way." Over the following weeks, the Valith established their rule over Earth. Massive temples were constructed in every city, built with technology that could reshape matter itself. Humans came to worship daily, bringing offerings of food, art, and raw materials. In return, the Valith promised protection and guidance. The aliens appeared to their worshippers as beings of pure light and energy. They were tall and graceful, with voices like singing. They never seemed to eat or sleep. They could make objects appear from thin air and heal the sick with a touch. To most humans, they were clearly divine beings who deserved absolute devotion, but in the hidden places, resistance was growing. Dr. Harper had managed to capture some of the Velith's technology during a temple raid. When she examined it closely, she discovered something shocking. Hidden beneath layers of holographic projection and quantum manipulation was something very different. The Valith weren't energy beings at all. They were organic creatures, not too different from humans in their basic biology. They were using incredibly advanced technology to create illusions that made them appear godlike. Their miracles were just very sophisticated machines. More importantly, Lisa discovered that the aliens were dying. Their home planet was running out of resources, and their population was declining. They needed new worlds to colonize, and they had chosen Earth. But they couldn't take it by force because humans outnumbered them by millions to one. So instead, they had chosen to rule through deception and worship when Jake Morrison received Lisa's findings through the underground network. He realized the true scope of their situation. The Valith weren't conquerors in the traditional sense. They were refugees, using lies and technology to trick humanity into giving up their world voluntarily. The knowledge gave him hope. If the Valith could be exposed for what they really were, perhaps humanity could fight back. But first, they needed to find a way to break through the mind control that had captured so many of their fellow humans. As the first year of Valith rule came to an end, the resistance remained small, but determined. They knew the truth now. Their gods were nothing more than desperate aliens with advanced technology. The question was whether they could convince the rest of humanity before it was too late. The war for Earth's future was just beginning. It would be fought not just with weapons, but with truth itself. 20 years had passed since the Valith first arrived on Earth. Commander Alex Rodriguez crouched in the ruins of what used to be Los Angeles, watching the morning ritual through his binoculars. Thousands of humans walked slowly toward the great crystal temple in the center of the city. Their faces were blank and peaceful as they carried baskets of food and precious metals. Alex had been only 12 years old when the aliens came. He remembered his parents kneeling before the Veilith priests, tears of joy on their faces as they praised their new gods. But Alex had hidden in the basement that day, and something about the aliens' mental influence had never quite taken hold of him. Maybe it was because he was young. Maybe it was just luck. Either way, he had spent the last 20 years learning to fight back. "They're increasing the tribute demands again," whispered Kelly Mason, his second in command. She was lying flat on the broken concrete beside him, also watching the procession. "That's twice as much food as last month." "The Veilith are getting desperate," Alex said quietly. "Dr. Harper's intelligence reports say their homeworld is dying faster than they expected. They need to speed up the terraforming process." Alex and his resistance cell had been working with Dr. Lisa Harper for 15 years now. She was older now, her hair gray from years of stress and hiding, but her mind was still sharp. Her hidden laboratory had become the center of the human resistance, the place where they studied captured Veilith technology and planned their operations. "Commander, we've got movement from the temple," said Bobby Chun, the youngest member of their team. He was watching through a different scope, focused on the alien building. "Looks like a transport ship is landing." Alex shifted his binoculars to the temple. A smaller crystal ship was setting down on the building's roof. Unlike the massive vessels that had first arrived on Earth, this one was only about the size of a city bus. As he watched, several figures emerged from the ship. From this distance, they looked like the usual Veilith priests, tall, glowing beings in flowing robes, but Alex had learned to look for the small details that most people missed. The way one of the figures stumbled slightly as it walked. The way another seemed to favor its left leg. These small imperfections didn't match the perfect, divine beings that the Veilith pretended to be. "There," he said, pointing. "Third figure from the left. Did you see it stumble?" Kelly looked through her scope. "Yeah, I saw it. Gods don't trip over their own feet." This was the kind of observation that had helped the Resistance slowly build evidence against the Veilith over the past 2 decades. Every small mistake, every moment when their technology failed, every sign that they were just mortal beings using advanced tools to create illusions. Meanwhile, inside the temple, Dr. Maya Chun was conducting her own dangerous mission. She was Dr. Harper's former student, now 35 years old and one of the most important spies in the Resistance. For the past 10 years, she had been posing as a devoted worshiper. Working her way up the ranks of the human priests who served the Veilith, Maya knelt before the altar in the temple's main chamber, her head bowed in fake worship around her. Hundreds of other humans did the same, their minds clouded by the Veilith's mental influence. But Maya had learned to resist the aliens' mind control through meditation techniques that Dr. Harper had developed. The head priest, a Veilith who called himself Divine Speaker Astros, stood before the crowd. To most humans, he appeared as a being of pure light, beautiful and terrible. But Maya had trained herself to see through the illusion. She could make out the faint outline of the alien's real body underneath the holographic projection. "Children of Earth," Astros spoke, his voice echoing directly in their minds, "the blessed transformation of your world continues. Soon, this planet will be a paradise worthy of your devotion. But we need more from you. The sacred metals must be gathered. Faster, the food offerings must increase. Your dedication will be rewarded with eternal peace." Maya listened carefully, but she was more interested in what Astros said when he thought no humans were paying attention. After the ceremony ended and most worshippers had left, Maya hid behind one of the temple's pillars. She had planted a small recording device there weeks ago, one that Dr. Harper had designed to pick up the Veilith's private communications through her hidden earpiece. Maya heard Astros speaking to another Veilith in their real language. The translation device in her ear converted their words into English. The harvest is still too slow, Astros was saying. High Command reports that our homeworld has less than 50 years before total ecosystem collapse. We need to complete the terraforming within 30 years, or we'll lose too much of our population during the journey. What about the human resistance? Asked the other alien. Intelligence reports say they have discovered some of our technology. Impossible, Astros replied. These primitives barely understand their own technology, let alone ours. A few humans hiding in ruins cannot threaten beings who have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Maya smiled grimly. The aliens' arrogance was their greatest weakness. They couldn't imagine that humans might be smart enough to figure out their secrets. Back in Dr. Harper's laboratory, Alex Rodriguez and his team were studying their latest breakthrough. They had managed to steal a small piece of Valeth equipment during a raid on a supply convoy. It looked like a simple metal cube, but Dr. Harper's analysis had revealed something incredible. It's a quantum manipulation device, Lisa explained, showing Alex and Kelly the readings on her computer screen. This single cube can alter matter at the atomic level. It's how they reshape our cities and create their illusions. How does it work? Alex asked. It generates a specific frequency that affects quantum particles, Lisa said. But here's the interesting part. The frequency is very precise. If it gets disrupted even slightly, the device stops working. Kelly leaned forward. Are you saying we could jam it? More than that, Lisa said with a smile. I think we could turn it against them. If we can generate the right kind of interference, we might be able to disrupt all their technology in a limited area. This was exactly the kind of breakthrough the Resistance had been hoping for. Alex immediately began planning how they could use this knowledge. If they could create dead zones where Valeth technology didn't work, they might be able to show people what the aliens really looked like. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Maya Chen sent word through the underground network that the Valeth were planning a major ceremony in Central Park. High Archon Zephyrus himself, the leader of all Valeth forces on Earth, would be appearing to bless the completion of their LATES terraforming project. Dr. Harper worked around the clock to build an electromagnetic pulse device based on her analysis of the stolen quantum manipulator. It was crude compared to Valeth technology, but it might be enough to cause a temporary disruption. We'll only get one shot at this, Alex told his team as they prepared for the mission. If this works, we'll have proof that the Valeth aren't gods. If it fails, they'll probably track us down and kill us all. I'm ready, said Bobby Chun, who would be operating the EMP device. Dr. Harper explained how it works. I just need to get within 50 yards of the target and activate it. Kelly and I will provide cover, Alex said. Maya will be in the crowd to record whatever happens. If we can get footage of a Valeth without their illusions, we can spread it through the Resistance network. The day of the ceremony, thousands of humans gathered in Central Park. The area had been transformed into something that looked like a classical Greek temple, with white marble columns and golden decorations. At the center of it all stood High Archon Zephyrus, appearing as a figure of incredible beauty and power, surrounded by light that seemed to come from within his body. Alex, Kelly, and Bobby worked their way through the crowd, trying to look like ordinary worshippers. Maya was already in position near the front, her hidden camera ready to record whatever happened. Divine children, Zephyrus spoke to the crowd, his mental voice filled with warmth and authority. Today marks another step in your world's transformation into paradise. You have served faithfully, and you will be rewarded with lives of peace and prosperity under our eternal guidance. Bobby Chun had reached his position. He looked at Alex, who nodded. Bobby activated the EMP device. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the air around Zephyrus began to shimmer and flicker. The beautiful being of light wavered like a bad television picture. And for just a few seconds, the crowd saw the truth. Instead of a glorious divine figure, there stood a pale, insect-like creature about 7 feet tall. Its body was thin and weak-looking, covered in what appeared to be some kind of technological suit. Its face was alien but clearly mortal, with large black eyes that showed very real fear and confusion. The illusion snapped back into place almost immediately, but Maya's camera had caught it all. Several humans in the crowd had seen it too, and they stood staring in shock, their minds trying to process what they had witnessed. "Technical difficulties," Zephyrus announced, his mental voice now carrying a hint of anger. "Return to your homes. The ceremony will be completed another time, but the damage was done." For the first time in 20 years, humans had seen one of their gods revealed as something very different from what they claimed to be. Sam Tucker was just 17 years old, but he had never known a world without the Valith. Born 3 years after the invasion, he had grown up in New Chicago, where the Crystal Temple dominated the skyline like a giant glowing mountain. Unlike most people his age, Sam had never felt the pull to worship the alien gods. His grandmother, Rose Tucker, had hidden him during the early mind control sessions, and somehow the alien influence had never taken hold. Now Sam worked as an apprentice engineer in the city's maintenance systems. It was a job that let him move around the city freely, fixing water pipes and electrical systems that the Valith hadn't bothered to upgrade with their advanced technology. They preferred to keep humans dependent on primitive systems while they worked on their grand terraforming projects. On this particular morning, Sam was supposed to be fixing a broken ventilation system in the basement of the central temple. But as he walked through the building's lower levels, he heard something that made him stop and listen. Voices were coming from one of the sealed chambers that humans were forbidden to enter. Sam pressed his ear to the wall. The voices were speaking in English, but they sounded strange, mechanical, like computers talking to each other. "Quantum projection system operating at 67% efficiency," one voice said. "Holographic matrix showing signs of degradation. Recommend immediate maintenance." "Maintenance cycle will have to wait," replied another voice. "High Archon Zephyrus requires all available power for tonight's ceremony. We cannot afford to show weakness in front of the human population." Sam's heart raced. These weren't the beautiful musical voices that the Valith used when speaking to humans. These sounded like technicians discussing broken equipment. He pulled out his smartphone, an old device that his grandmother had hidden from the Valith technology sweeps, and started recording. That evening, Sam returned to the temple for the weekly blessing ceremony. Hundreds of humans filled the main chamber, kneeling on the polished marble floor as they waited for their god to appear. Sam positioned himself near the back, his phone hidden but ready to record. High Priest Valdris materialized in the center of the chamber, appearing as a towering figure of golden light. His voice filled everyone's minds with feelings of peace and love as he began the blessing ritual. But Sam noticed something that no one else seemed to see. There was a faint flickering around the edges of the priest's form, like a bad hologram. "Faithful children," Valdris spoke into their minds, "tonight you will witness a great miracle. Your devotion has pleased us, and we will grant you a vision of the paradise that awaits those who serve us well." Valdris raised his arms, and the air above the crowd began to shimmer. Images appeared showing beautiful gardens, crystal cities, and humans living in perfect harmony under Valith guidance. The crowd gasped in wonder, many of them crying tears of joy at the beautiful vision. But Sam was watching Valdris himself, not the images. And at the exact moment the priest was creating the vision, his holographic form flickered and failed for almost 3 full seconds. What Sam saw in those 3 seconds would change everything. Instead of a golden god, there stood a creature that looked like a giant insect. It was tall and thin, with pale gray skin and 4 arms that were frantically working controls on some kind of technological device strapped to its chest. Its face was alien but clearly showed panic as it struggled to restore its disguise. Sam's phone captured it all. The moment when humanity's god revealed itself as just another alien using advanced technology to fool them, the hologram snapped back into place, and Valdris continued the ceremony as if nothing had happened. But Sam had seen the truth, and more importantly, he had recorded it. The next morning, Sam took his video to the only person he trusted completely. His grandmother Rose had been part of the underground resistance for 20 years, though she had never told Sam directly. She ran a small repair shop that served as a secret meeting place for resistance members. "Grandma, you need to see this," Sam said, showing her the video on his phone. Rose watched the recording 3 times before speaking. Her hands were shaking as she looked at her grandson. "Sam, do you understand what this means?" "It means they're not gods," Sam said simply. "They're just aliens with fancy technology. This video could change everything," Rose said. "But it's also going to make you the most wanted person on Earth. The Valeth will kill you if they find out you recorded this." Within hours, Rose had contacted Commander Alex Rodriguez through the Resistance Network. Alex arrived at the repair shop that afternoon with Dr. Maya Chun, who had managed to slip away from her duties at the temple. "This is incredible," Maya said after watching the video. "We've been trying to get clear footage of a Valeth without their disguise for years. This could be exactly what we need to wake people up. The question is how to spread it," Alex said. "The Valeth control all the major communication networks. If we try to broadcast this, they'll shut us down in minutes." "We do it the old way," Rose suggested, "person to person. Copy the video to every device we can find. Get it to every resistance cell in the world. Make so many copies that they can't stop all of them." Over the next 2 weeks, Sam's video spread through the underground network like wildfire. Resistance members copied it to thousands of phones, tablets, and computers. They handed it to friends and family members who they thought might be ready to see the truth. They left copies in public places where people might find them, but the real breakthrough came when a group of resistance hackers managed to interrupt the Veleth's own broadcast system. During what was supposed to be a routine morning blessing, Sam's video suddenly appeared on every screen in New Chicago. For 30 seconds before the Valeth could cut the feed, millions of people saw their god revealed as an alien in a high-tech disguise. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Some people refused to believe what they had seen, claiming it was a trick or a test of their faith. But others began to question everything they had been told for the past 23 years. Riots broke out in several cities as humans who had been free from the mind control faced those who were still under its influence. High Archon Zephyrus responded swiftly and brutally. The pretense of being benevolent gods was abandoned overnight. Valeth warships appeared over every major city, and their weapons began targeting any group of humans that seemed to be organizing resistance. "The time for patience has ended," Zephyrus announced in a broadcast that reached every human mind on Earth. "You have been given the gift of our guidance, and some of you have chosen to reject it. This cannot be tolerated. From this day forward, any human who opposes our rule will be eliminated. Any human who aids the resistance will watch their family die before joining them in death." But the damage was already done. Across the globe, humans were remembering what they had been before the Valeth arrived. Military officers who had been in hiding for decades began to emerge. Scientists started working together to understand and reverse engineer the alien technology. Most importantly, the vast majority of humanity finally understood that they were not fighting gods, but invaders who could be defeated. Commander Rodriguez found himself leading a resistance movement that had grown from a few hundred people to millions almost overnight. Dr. Harper's laboratory became the center of a scientific revolution as researchers around the world shared their discoveries about Valeth technology. Sam Tucker, the teenager who had started it all, became a symbol of human defiance. The Valeth put a massive bounty on his head, but the resistance protected him as he traveled from city to city, showing people that their gods were nothing more than desperate aliens trying to steal their world. "You showed us the truth, Alex," told Sam during a meeting in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath New York. "But now comes the hard part. We have to turn that truth into victory." The war that followed would be unlike anything in human history. The Valeth had superior technology and the ability to reshape matter itself. But humans had something the aliens had never faced before, an entire species that refused to bow down, that had learned to fight back, and that would never again accept slavery disguised as divine guidance. Maya Chun continued her dangerous work. inside the temples, now gathering intelligence for military strikes rather than just collecting information. She discovered that the Veilith were divided into competing factions, each controlling different aspects of their empire. More importantly, she learned that their homeworld was dying even faster than they had previously thought. They had, perhaps, 15 years before their entire civilization collapsed, which meant they were becoming more desperate and more dangerous with each passing day. Dr. Harper made the breakthrough that would change everything when she successfully reverse-engineered a Veilith quantum manipulation device. For the first time since the invasion began, humans had access to technology that could actually damage the alien ships and disrupt their holographic disguises on a large scale, but the Veilith's response was swift and merciless. They began a campaign of terror unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Entire cities were destroyed if they showed signs of resistance. Humans were herded into camps where they were forced to work on terraforming projects that would make Earth habitable for Veilith but deadly for human life. The war had been raging for 2 years since. Sam Tucker's video changed everything. Dr. Maya Shan stood in what used to be MIT's physics laboratory, now hidden deep underground in a network of tunnels that stretched for miles beneath Boston. She was no longer pretending to worship the Veilith. Now she was one of the lead scientists working to turn their own technology against them. "Pete, hand me that quantum resonator," Maya called to her assistant, Pete Williams. He had been a NASA engineer before the invasion, one of the few who had managed to avoid the mental conditioning and stay hidden for over 20 years. Pete passed her the device, which looked like a metal sphere covered in blinking lights. It was a piece of Veilith technology that they had captured during a raid on an alien supply depot. Maya had been working for months to understand how it functioned. "Any progress?" asked Commander Alex Rodriguez as he entered the laboratory. His face was covered in dirt and small cuts from the morning's battle. The Resistance was fighting the Veilith every day now, using hit-and-run tactics to disrupt their operations. "More than progress," Maya said with a tired smile. "I think we've figured out how to reverse their quantum manipulation. Watch this." She activated the device and pointed it at a steel bar on the laboratory table. The bar began to glow and then slowly changed shape, becoming a perfect sphere. Then Maya adjusted some controls and the sphere changed back into a bar. "We can do what they do," Pete said excitedly. "We can reshape matter at the atomic level." "It's not just that," Maya explained. "I've discovered something about how their technology works. All their devices are connected through a quantum network. They share processing power and information with each other. It's what makes them so effective, but it's also their weakness." Alex leaned forward. "What kind of weakness?" "If we can introduce the right kind of virus into their network, we could potentially disable all their technology at once. Every ship, every weapon, every holographic projector they have." This was the breakthrough the Resistance had been hoping for, but before they could celebrate, alarms began ringing throughout the underground base. Red lights flashed as the emergency communication system activated. "All units, this is General Williams," came the voice over the speakers. "Veilith forces are conducting a major assault on our positions in Detroit. We need immediate reinforcement." Alex grabbed his weapon and started toward the exit. "Maya, how long do you need to finish the virus?" "At least another week," she replied. "Maybe 2. "Then we buy you that time," Alex said grimly. Meanwhile, in Detroit, the battle was not going well for the Resistance. The Veilith had discovered one of their major weapons factories and were attacking it with everything they had. Jake Morrison, now 78 years old but still sharp as ever, coordinated the defense from a wheelchair in the facility's command. "Center, Baker Squad, fall back to position 3, he spoke into his radio. "Charlie Squad, provide covering fire." But the Veilith weren't just using their advanced weapons. They had brought something new to this battle. Humans who had been completely taken over by their mind control technology were fighting alongside the aliens. These weren't just willing collaborators anymore. These were people whose minds had been completely rewritten to serve the Veilith without question. "Sir, we've got human troops advancing from the east," reported Sergeant Linda Hayes, from her position on the factory's roof. "They're using our own weapons against us." Jake felt sick. The Valeth had found a way to turn humans into perfect soldiers who felt no fear, no doubt, and no mercy. It was like fighting zombies, except these zombies were smart and well-trained. "All units, listen carefully," Jake said into his radio. "The human soldiers are not in control of themselves. Use non-lethal force when possible. These are our own people." The battle raged for 6 hours. The resistance fighters were skilled and determined, but they were facing an enemy that could reshape the battlefield itself. Valeth weapons turned concrete walls into liquid, created force fields out of thin air, and fired energy beams that could cut through any armor. But the humans had learned to be creative. Sam Tucker, now 19 and one of the Resistance's best saboteurs, had planted explosives throughout the factory's underground levels. When the Valeth forces gathered in the main assembly area, he triggered the charges. The explosion collapsed 3 floors of the building, trapping dozens of alien soldiers in the rubble. It also damaged their quantum manipulation devices, causing their holographic disguises to flicker and fail. For the first time in the battle, humans could see their enemies as they really were. The Valeth looked different from what Sam had recorded years ago. These soldiers were bigger and more heavily armored, but they were still clearly mortal beings. When concrete blocks fell on them, they got hurt. When metal beams pinned them down, they couldn't escape without help. They bled green blood and screamed in pain just like any other living creature. "They're not gods," Linda Hayes shouted over the radio. "They're just aliens in fancy armor. Keep fighting." The tide of battle began to turn. Knowing that their enemies could be hurt and killed gave the human fighters new courage. They started using tactics that the Valeth couldn't counter, like collapsing buildings and using the aliens' own reshaped terrain against them. But the real turning point came when Maya Chun's virus was finally ready. Working around the clock, she and Pete Williams had created a piece of code that could spread through the Valeth quantum network and shut down their technology systems. "It's ready," Maya announced over the Resistance communication network. "But we need to get close to one of their main command nodes to upload it." The nearest command node was in the crystal ship hovering over London. It was heavily defended and seemed impossible to reach. But Commander Rodriguez had an idea. "We don't go to them," he said during an emergency meeting of Resistance leaders. "We make them come to us." The plan was simple but dangerous. The Resistance would stage a fake surrender in London, claiming that they wanted to negotiate with High Archon Zephyrus himself. When the Valeth leader came down to accept their surrender, Maya would upload the virus to his personal systems, getting Zephyrus. To come down required making the surrender look real. Jake Morrison himself volunteered to be the bait, despite his age and poor health. He would present himself as the leader of all human resistance, offering to give up in exchange for mercy for his followers. "This is suicide," Alex Rodriguez protested. "They'll kill you the moment they realize it's a trap?" "I'm an old man," Jake replied calmly. "I've lived longer than most people do during wartime. If my death can free humanity, then it's a good death." 3 days later, Jake Morrison sat in a wheelchair in the ruins of Westminster Abbey, waiting for the most important meeting of his life. Around him, hundreds of resistance fighters had laid down their weapons and were kneeling in fake surrender. Maya Chun was hidden among them, her virus upload device disguised as a medical scanner. High Archon Zephyrus descended from his ship in a display of overwhelming power. He appeared as a being of pure energy, surrounded by smaller Valeth in their holographic disguises. To the human observers, it looked like gods accepting the surrender of mortals. "So the great human resistance finally admits defeat?" Zephyrus spoke directly into their minds. "You have caused us much trouble, old man. But your species will serve us well once we complete our educational programs." Jake looked up at the alien, leader with defiant eyes. "We're not surrendering because we're defeated. We're surrendering because we're smart enough to know when we're beaten." "Your wisdom comes too late," Zephyrus replied. "But perhaps we can find useful work for the survivors." As Zephyrus moved closer to Jake, Maya Chun activated her device. The virus began uploading into the alien's quantum network through his personal communication systems. She held her breath, praying that her code would work. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Zephyrus suddenly stumbled, his perfect holographic form flickering. Around him, the other Valith began to waver as their disguises failed. "What is happening?" Zephyrus demanded, but his voice was no longer the beautiful mental communication humans were used to. It was the harsh, mechanical sound of his real voice coming through damaged translators. "We're taking our world back," Jake said quietly. Across the globe, Valith technology began failing all at once. Their ships crashed or became trapped on the ground. Their weapons stopped working. Their holographic disguises disappeared completely, revealing them as the desperate, dying aliens they really were. But the virus did more than just shut down their technology. It also freed every human who had been under their mind control. Millions of people suddenly remembered who they were and what had been done to them. The real revolution had begun. For the first time since the invasion started, humans outnumbered their enemies and had weapons that could actually hurt them. The Valith found themselves facing not scattered resistance groups, but an entire planet of angry people who wanted their freedom back. The war was far from over, but the balance of power had finally shifted. The false gods were falling, and humanity was standing up to reclaim their world. 6 months after Mayoshan's virus had crippled the Valith technology across Earth, the war had completely changed. Sam Tucker stood on the roof of a recaptured skyscraper in New York, watching human fighters load captured alien weapons onto transport trucks. The Valith ships that had once ruled the skies now lay crashed in the streets below, their crystal hulls cracked and powerless. "Hard to believe they ever seemed like gods," said Kelly Mason, standing beside him. She had been promoted to general after Commander Rodriguez was killed in the battle for Chicago. Her face was scarred from that fight, but her eyes burned with determination. "They were never gods?" Sam replied, adjusting the communication device on his shoulder. "They were just bullies with better technology, and now we have that technology too." The resistance had become something much larger. It was now the Earth Liberation Army, with millions of soldiers fighting to drive the aliens off their planet completely. Dr. Maya Chun had been working around the clock to help human engineers understand and improve the captured Valith equipment. "Sam. Kelly, we need you in the command center," came Maya's voice over their radios. "We've intercepted some important communications." They made their way down to the building's main floor, where Maya had set up a temporary laboratory. The room was filled with alien devices that she had been studying and modifying. Pete Williams was hunched over a computer, his face pale with worry. "What's wrong?" Kelly asked. "We cracked the Valith long-range communication system," Pete explained. "We can hear their messages to other parts of their empire." "Kelly, they're calling for help." Maya pulled up a translation of the alien message on her computer screen. "High Archon Zephyrus has been in contact with the Valith home fleet. He's telling them that Earth is in full rebellion and asking for immediate military support." "How? Long before they get here?" Sam asked. "At least 2 years, Maya said. "But when they arrive, there will be thousands of ships. The entire Valith war fleet." Kelly stared at the message. The humans had spent months fighting to free their planet from a few hundred Valith ships and soldiers. The idea of facing thousands of alien warships was terrifying. "Then we need to finish this war before they arrive," she said finally. "We need to defeat every Valith on Earth and make sure none of them can guide the fleet to our planet." The final campaign began immediately. Jake Morrison, despite being almost 80 years old and confined to a wheelchair, coordinated the global strategy from his command post in the ruins of Washington, D.C. His mind was still sharp, and his decades of military experience were crucial for planning the complex operations needed to root out the remaining Valith forces. "They're not fighting like conquerors anymore," Jake explained to his officers during a strategy meeting. "They're fighting like survivors. That makes them desperate, but it also makes them predictable. They'll fall back to their most heavily defended positions and try to hold out until help arrives." The biggest Valith stronghold was their original landing site in what used to be London. High Archon Zephyrus had gathered the surviving alien forces there, along with thousands of humans who were still under partial mind control. The aliens had turned the entire city into a fortress, using their remaining quantum manipulation technology to create walls and barriers that seemed impossible to breach. But Sam Tucker had an idea. Over the past months, he had become an expert at using captured Veilith technology. He had learned that their devices could be modified to work in ways the aliens had never intended. What if we don't try to break through their defenses? He suggested during a planning meeting. What if we turn their own technology against them from the inside? Sam's plan was dangerous but simple. A small team would infiltrate the London fortress and plant modified quantum manipulators throughout the alien defenses. When activated, these devices would cause the Veilith's own defensive systems to collapse on themselves. "I'll lead the team," Sam said. "I know their technology better than anyone except Dr. Chun, and I'm small enough to get through their security." "Absolutely not," Kelly replied. "You're too valuable to risk on a suicide mission." "It's not suicide if it works," Sam said with a grin. "Besides, I've been fighting these things since I was 17. I'm not going to stop now." The infiltration team consisted of Sam Tucker, 2 former Special Forces soldiers named Brian Clark and Lisa Stone, and Dr. Maya Shun herself. Maya insisted on coming because she was the only one who truly understood how to modify the alien devices quickly and quietly. They approached London through the old subway tunnels, moving carefully through passages that the Veilith had not completely sealed. The city above them had been transformed into something alien and hostile. The buildings were covered in crystalline growths, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with strange energy. "Remember," Maya whispered as they moved through the tunnels, "we need to plant the devices in 5 specific locations. The quantum resonance will create a cascade failure that should bring down their entire defensive network." It took them 3 days to reach their first target. The Veilith had sensors everywhere, and the team had to move slowly to avoid detection. When they finally reached the underground power station that fed energy to the alien defenses, Maya quickly modified one of their captured devices and attached it to the main power conduit. "1 down, 4 to go," she said quietly, but as they moved toward their second target, they were discovered. A Veilith patrol spotted them in one of the tunnels, and suddenly alarms were echoing throughout the underground system. "Run!" shouted Brian Clark, firing his energy weapon at the pursuing aliens. The team split up to avoid capture. Sam and Maya continued toward their targets while Brian and Lisa held off the Veilith forces. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the tunnels as the 2 soldiers fought a desperate rearguard action. Sam and Maya managed to plant 2 more devices before they were cornered in an abandoned subway station. A dozen Veilith soldiers surrounded them, their weapons aimed and ready to fire. "Surrender, humans!" demanded the lead alien. Without their holographic disguises, the Veilith looked exactly like the insectoid creatures Sam had first recorded years ago. "You cannot escape?" "We're not trying to escape," Sam said, holding up a small device in his hand. "We're trying to finish our mission." Before the aliens could react, Sam activated the device. All 5 of the quantum manipulators that they had planted began working at once, creating a massive feedback loop in the Veilith defense systems. The effect was immediate and devastating. Throughout London, the alien barriers began to collapse. Their energy shields flickered and died. Their weapons stopped working. Most importantly, the mind control transmitters that had kept thousands of humans obedient suddenly shut down. Above ground, the Earth Liberation Army launched their final assault. Without their technological advantages, the Veilith were just frightened aliens facing an angry planet full of humans who outnumbered them 1,000,000 to 1. High Archon Zephyrus made his last stand in the crystal tower that had been built on the ruins of Big Ben. When human soldiers finally reached his command chamber, they found him alone, his holographic disguise gone, revealing a creature that looked weak and old. "You do not understand what you have done," Zephyrus said in his real voice, which sounded thin and desperate. "Without our guidance, your species will destroy itself. We came to save you from your own primitive nature. We never asked to be saved. replied Kelly Mason, who had led the final assault personally. "We asked to be left alone." "Our homeworld is dying," Zephyrus continued. "We are the last of our kind. We only wanted to survive." "Then you should have asked for help instead of pretending to be gods," Kelly said. "Humans might have helped you find a new home, but we will never help conquerors." The last major battle of the war was over. Scattered groups of Valith still fought in remote locations around the world, but their organized resistance had collapsed. More importantly, Sam Tucker had managed to destroy their long-range communication equipment before they could send detailed information about Earth's defenses to their home fleet. Dr. Maya Chun spent the following months working with captured Valith scientists who agreed to cooperate in exchange for their lives. She learned that the alien empire was indeed dying, just as they had claimed. Their home star was becoming unstable, and dozens of worlds in their territory were becoming uninhabitable. They weren't completely lying, Maya told Jake Morrison during one of their final meetings. They are refugees. But that doesn't excuse what they did to us. "What happens when their war fleet arrives?" Jake asked. "We'll be ready," Maya said with confidence. "We have their technology now, and we understand it better than they do. When they get here, they won't find helpless humans kneeling in temples. They'll find a planet full of people who know exactly how to fight back." Sam Tucker, now 22 and a hero to billions of people around the world, stood before the United Nations Assembly as they voted to establish the Earth Defense Force. His words were broadcast to every corner of the planet. 25 years ago, the Valith came to Earth claiming to be gods, he said. "They ruled us through fear and lies, taking our resources and our freedom. But we learned the truth. We learned that no one is too powerful to be challenged, and no lie is too big to be exposed.